know I'm a bit late as we're already well into the new year. We're almost done with January. But as somebody whose family celebrates Lunar New Year, I kind of see the first couple of weeks of the year as a trial run for the new year, you know? And I don't see the new year as officially started until after Lunar New Year, which is not usually until the first couple of weeks of February. So I don't think it's too late to discuss my 2024 reading goals and my priority TBR for the year. My number one goal is my Goodreads reading goal, which is to read 75 books in the year. This was also my Goodreads reading goal last year, and I feel like this is just a good sweet spot for me. While the number of books you read in a single year is quite arbitrary, I do like to set a goal for myself just so I can focus and just so, you know, just so I have something to aim for. It gives me a sense of purpose almost. Plus, as I said, this is a number that I'm confident that I can hit, so it doesn't really add any pressure to me. It's just my Goodreads reading goal. Okay, let's move on. My next goal is also another number goal, and that is to read 5 classics. I only read 1 classic in 2023, but it was also one of my favorite books of the entire year. Classics, unfortunately, is just one of those things that I generally don't reach for, but when I do reach for a classic, I tend to really enjoy it. So I think giving myself a number goal of 5 classics in this year would give me an incentive to pick up more classics and maybe find more new favorite books. My next goal is definitely a very Delulu goal, and that is to reduce my physical TBR to less than 50 books. I don't even know exactly how many books I have on my physical TBR as of right now. The last time I counted was when I filmed a video on it, and at that time I think I was at around 200 books. I've obviously read a couple of books since then, but I've also added some. I want to say maybe we're at like the 150s right now, which is a lot of books. In order for me to reach this goal, I'm going to have to read more than my 75 books, like way more than my 75 book goal. So obviously this is a very Delulu goal, but I'm just a girl and a girl can dream. This next goal is definitely designed to help with that last goal, but it's also just a general goal that I have because last year was a little bit unhinged when it comes to book buying, but I want to limit my book buying to 5 books a month. That is with a little bit of a disclaimer, a little bit of a see the fine print. I borrow a lot of books from Libby, and I've recently also been borrowing books from the library. If I read a book on Libby or read it from the library and I really love it and I want to buy a physical copy of it, I'm not going to count it towards this 5 book limit because it doesn't really add to my physical TBR, you know what I mean? Or if it's a book that I buy and I read immediately, like for example, I'm in the middle of the Throne of Glass series right now. I just bought Heir of Fire because it was the next book that I had to read that I didn't already own. So I'm not going to count that because I bought it with the intention of reading it right away, and I am reading it right now. You know what I'm saying? Even though I'm not really reducing my physical TBR by reading those books, I'm not adding to them by buying those books. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And also another little bit of a asterisk to this goal is I'm gonna allow myself to buy 1 extra book per 5 books that I read off of my physical TBR. Say I already bought the 5 extra books, right? That adds to my physical TBR, but I've also already read 5 books from my physical TBR that month. I can add 1 extra book, so I can buy a total of 6 books for that month. I know I'm just making all sorts of excuses for myself to, allow myself to buy some more books, but listen, we do a lot of testing in medical school, and sometimes after a long week of having like 5 million tests, I just want to reward myself with a book. It makes me happy, it's good for my mental health. So I'm not going to completely deprive myself of book buying in 2024. I just want to do less unhinged book buying. Also, I'm so sorry if you can hear my other dog like just barking his head off. I'm gonna go get my dog so he stops barking. All right, we're back. I successfully have contained the barking dog in my room. Anyways, moving on. My next goal is to read more high fantasy. I generally want 2024 for me to return to my fantasy era. Next goal is to unhaul books that don't make me happy. This one should probably be a no-brainer. I have a couple of books in my collection that whenever I catch a glimpse of them, I remember of how much I didn't like reading them. And I never want to feel that way when I look at my shelves. I want to look at my shelves and feel happy. Right now, I'm seeing a few books on there that there's no reason for them to be on my shelves anymore because they're just not for me. So I just need to donate donate them or give them away to people who might actually enjoy them. And then kind of on that same vein is I want to sell some books on Pango or Mercari. I get Fairy Loot and Illumicrate every single month, and sometimes I also get Owl Crate. The thing about those book subscription boxes is for the most part, you don't know what book you're gonna get, and sometimes they double up. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully, but I do have a couple of doubles. I also have some really good condition popular books that I didn't particularly care for that I could sell just to get a little bit of money back from all of my unhinged book buying so I can buy more books. Okay, this next goal is a little bit of a duh kind of thing, but I just want to read on a whim more this year. As a mood reader, I really need to mood read more often. There were so many videos that I filmed last year that are never going to see the light of day because I hated how they turned out, since I was forcing myself to read books that I just was simply not in the mood for. It's not that the books were bad, I just didn't want to read them in that moment. So it was affecting my reading experience, and it was ultimately putting me into a reading slump. I think that was why I was in a reading slump for like half of the year last year. I still want to film those themed reading vlogs, but I think I'm going to approach them a little bit differently this year. I'm going to follow my heart more wherever it leads me for my next book, to piggyback off of that. And this is a goal that I have every single year, and I still need to get better at it, and that is to DNF books that I'm not enjoying. Obviously, this is another like big duh, but I have a really hard time with DNFing books. I have this mentality that I've already put this much time and effort into reading it, I might as well see it through. I'm not gonna do that anymore. There's no point in me doing that. If I'm not enjoying it, put it down. If I'm still not vibing with a book at 30%, I'm either gonna soft DNF it and revisit it later, or just fully DNF it, because 30% I think is enough for a book to capture my attention. And then this is also kind of piggybacking off of that, and that is to find more 5-star books. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit difficult to achieve because one, I am quite picky with my 5-star reads. I don't just give 5 stars willy-nilly, especially this year since I am doing quarter stars with my rating, which I know might be a little bit extra, but last year there were so many moments where I was like, oh, it's in between a 4.5 and a 4. That might make it even harder for me to actually find books that are truly 5 stars. And obviously you don't really know that a book is going to be a 5 stars until after you read it. So I guess the only thing that I can really do to kind of work on this goal is to pick up more books that at least have a chance of being 5 stars. But also I have plenty of 5-star books that I did not expect to be 5 stars, but are 5 stars. You know, this is like more of like a hopeful kind of thing. Fingers crossed I find more 5-star reads, because only 8 5-stars in 1 year from last year, that's awful. Like, I need more 5-star reads, and I think that was also why I was in a reading slump for most of last year. Also, I have not had a 5-star read since I read Happy Place last year. I think that was the last 5-star read I read, and I think I read that in August. So I haven't had a 5-star read in months. I'm in a 5-star desert right now. I need to find more 5 stars. I don't want to go months in 2024 without finding a 5-star. Anyways, I'm just gonna move on. Finish more series. I am so bad at finishing series. I have always been like this. For example, the Addicted Callaway series, I have been reading that series for going on 3 years now. And that is one of my favorite series of all time. So it's not because I'm not enjoying the series. I just have this tendency to save books for later. I don't know when later is. I don't know what later even means. I think I'm trying to save books for the perfect time to read them, but I don't know when that perfect time is. And frankly, that perfect time is probably never going to come. So I just need to read the series. I need to stop saving books. I also do this with new releases that I'm super excited about. Maybe it's partially because I am afraid of a story that I love to end, but I can always do a reread. You know what I mean? So there's really no good reason as to why I keep on saving them for later. It's so dumb. These next 2 goals are kind of related to my priority TBR for 2024, so let's just get into the priority TBR. The first one is I really want to catch up on Cassandra Clare's books. I still need to read the Last Hours trilogies, but in order for me to get to that, I still need to finish my reread of The Mortal Instruments. I'm not gonna get into the whole reading order of Cassandra Clare's books, but I need to read City of Heavenly Fire, which is the final book in the Mortal Instruments series, so I'm done done with the reread of that, I can move on to my reread of The Dark Artifices, which is Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, and Queen of Air and Darkness. After that, I can then move on to the Last Hours trilogy, which are books that I haven't read yet. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to be caught up with the Shadowhunters Chronicles. So when she does release new books, I can read them without the fear of them spoiling events in the Last Hours trilogy. I also did back her Kickstarter. I don't know when she's going to release the first book in that, but I want to read those books when I get them. So I need to read the Last Hours trilogy. And then last year she released Swordcatcher, which is her first adult fantasy novel, and it's also her first novel outside of the Shadowhunters Chronicles. I am very excited for it. It's also one of my most anticipated releases of last year that I didn't get to because I was saving it for later kind of thing. And then my next reading goal that pertains to my TBR is to also catch up to Sarah J Maas's books. So right now I am working on the Throne of Glass series. These are books that I've already read in the past. I read these back in 2016. This is The Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, and Crown of Midnight. I've already done my reread of this, and I have now moved on to Heir of Fire, which is a book that I haven't read previously. So I need to read that all the way up to Kingdom of Ash so I can finally finish the Throne of Glass series and be done with one of her actual completed series. And then for the ACOTAR series, so I read these two books back in 2016, and I read this in 2017 when it first came out. I mean, I still remember a lot from it because for the longest time, A Court of Mist and Fury was my favorite book. This was the very first time I've ever annotated a book. I didn't really annotate it, I just tabbed it, but that was the very first time I've ever done it because that's how much I love this book. But I still need to do a reread, and I really want to do a reread anyway, so I gotta do that so I can finally move on to these two books and catch up to the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. Lastly, on the Sarah J Maas note, I want to read the Crescent City series because the third book is going to come out at the end of this month, and I know I'm going to feel FOMO. I know everybody's going to be so excited about it. I'm obviously not going to be able to read it on release date because I haven't read the first two books. I still need to read those, but I really want to read it fairly soon, so I'm not like super left out on the whole Crescent City thing. And then as for the other series that are on my priority TBR this year that are not Sarah J Maas or Cassandra Clare, I need to read Finale, which is the final book in the Caraval trilogy, so I can move on to the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which I'm super excited about. I love Caraval. I really enjoy it, and I think the general consensus is that Once Upon a Broken Heart is way better than Caraval, and if I love Caraval as much as I do, I have a feeling that I'm gonna absolutely love Once Upon a Broken Heart. And then I also want to read The One Dark Window. I think it's only a duology, so I think both books are out already. I received One Dark Window in a Fairy Loot, I think, or Illumicrate, one of those, back in 2022, and I've been hearing amazing things about it lately because the second book, Two Dark Crowns, is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called, but the second book just came out late last year, and I've just been hearing the most amazing things about it, and it sounds like it's going to be right up my alley because it's supposed to be this gothic fantasy set in a beautiful gothic castle that's quite moody with sprinklings of romance, and that is exactly my cup of tea, so I have a good feeling about this series. Let's move on to some either standalones or sequels. I really want to read The Jaced Heir. This is another book that I received from either Fairyloot or Illumicrate, and ever since I received it, I've been hearing nothing but good things about it. I literally have not heard a single bad thing about this book. I don't even really know what it's about. I remember reading the synopsis of it and really enjoying it, but I've forgotten. It seems like everybody who picks this book up ends up really loving it, so I'm curious to see if I'm gonna love it too. And then next up is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. This was also one of my most anticipated releases of last year that I just kept on putting off because I don't know, okay? I don't know, I'm just a girl. But I really want to read that this year because, again, like I said, I have this feeling, you know, when you just have a feeling about a book, when you just in your heart know that it's most likely going to be a 5 stars. Like, I have that feeling about The Hurricane Wars. I have high expectations, which might not be good, but I don't know. I have a good feeling about it. I keep on saying that, so let's move on. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is another fantasy book that I've just been hearing amazing things about. Apparently, it is one of the best enemies to lovers ever. I love enemies to lovers. Like, why have I not read this book? It's because I've been putting it off. And I think the sequel is going to come out July, maybe? I don't know, but it's gonna come out later this year, and I want to be ready for the release of that. Next up is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Again, another one of my most anticipated releases of last year that I just kept on putting off. Ninth House is one of my favorite books that I read in 2022, and I have a feeling that Hellbent is gonna be even more amazing because from what I've heard, we get even more Darlington. I just need to read it. I know I'm gonna love it, so there's no reason for me to be putting it off. But this is definitely a top priority for me as well. I mean, all of these books are top priority for me. This next book is by an author that for some reason, I haven't read any of her books, but I have literally been interested in so many of her other books since I was in middle school. And that author is none other than Victoria Schwab, or V. Schwab, whatever you want to call her. I own This Savage Song. I have a feeling I'm gonna enjoy it. I haven't read it. I own Gallant. I still haven't read it. And the book that is on my list for my priority, I need to read this book this year because if I don't, I have a feeling that I'm just never gonna read it. That is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I know I'm about 5,000 years too late, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about Victoria Schwab that I just can't seem to get myself to pick up her books. And then this next book is by an author that I am super intimidated by. I don't know why exactly. I think it's because he's a very big name in fantasy. Last year I put the Mistborn trilogy on my TBR. I just never got to it. So this year I think I'm gonna approach Brandon Sanderson a little bit differently, and I'm gonna start with Warbreaker since as of right now it's still only a standalone. So I'm not jumping into a series and I'm not as intimidated by the whole idea of reading a Brandon Sanderson. Now I'm gonna move on to the books that are not out yet. I only have 3 here. I mean, I have other books that I'm really anticipating, but these are like my top highly anticipated books of the year. The first one being Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. This is the sequel to Empire of the Vampire, which was one of my favorite books of 2022. I've been waiting for this book. Like, I don't follow many authors on social media. I really don't. I follow Jessa Hastings and Jay Kristoff, and I only follow Jay Kristoff for all of the little crumbs that he's been giving us about Empire of the Damned. You do not understand how obsessed I am with Gabrielle de Leon. Like, I love vampires. I've said this before. I am trash for vampires, but oh my god, Gabrielle de Leon might be the hottest vampire I've ever read about. Like, you know what I mean? And oh my god, like, you do not want to be near me when I'm reading this book because I just know I'm gonna be the most insufferable human being. I already am being super insufferable about him right now. So yes, Empire of the Damned is definitely a priority TBR for me. Next one that is also kind of on that same note. I am also trash for these characters. I never really stopped talking about this series, so this shouldn't be a surprise for you guys if you've seen any of my videos before. That is Magnolia Park's Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. This is the 5th book in the Magnolia Parks universe, and this is BJ and Magnolia's 3rd and final book, which is so sad to think about. This book also comes out next month, like Empire of the Damned, and I just know it's going to break my heart and crush it like a grape, but I am going to be thanking Jessa Hastings for it. Like, I just know. And then last but not the least is Funny Story by Emily Henry. Last year I became an absolute Emily Henry stan. I loved 3 of the 4 books that I read by her last year. I have a feeling that Funny Story is also going to be a hit. I don't even know what it's about. I haven't actually looked up what this is about, but it's Emily Henry and I have full faith in her at this point. Those are all of my goals and my priority TBR for 2024. Let me know down below what your guys' goals are. Also, let me know what books are in your 2024 priority TBR. But as for now, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys on the next one. Toodles!